even the food source pre-COVID and say 2019 to try to find sources now, because a lot of small companies have gone out of business. A lot of small mom and pop businesses have gone under. That includes raising food. So wherever you look, the constriction of food supply is ever present.
Well, the cool thing is you can still grow it your own. And I guess there's so few of us doing it that they haven't really cracked down on that yet. There's been a few things over the years where people are saying the USDA got a little wacko here and there, but for the most part, they haven't messed a lot with backyard food production. And I don't know. I see the scenario where we're headed into hyperinflation, and governments don't survive hyperinflation. So, I think backyard food production, it's always, for me, it's always been the thing that's the most important thing in a collapse scenario. What is the most important skill you could have? And being able to grow food is definitely it.
And good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for stopping by with us for a minute. We're moving into now winter. So what can we do for our gardens? How can we keep our food moving forward production-wise? Our chickens have slowed down the laying of the eggs, so we're trying to adjust with that. Also, soil building, we're going to be trying to think about how to get the soils ready. We moved a bunch of compost and stuff today into our beds earlier this morning. Marjory Wildcraft's with me from the Grow Network again. I said we're going to be coming on a couple times a month to talk about something to keep our food growing sovereignty also in hand here, for a better term. So Marjory, appreciate you coming back again. It was just a month ago. People love the conversation, and it's been the slow motion train wreck since we even did last time. We said this whole war thing's gonna be trickling as the defense contractors keep milking. Speaking of cows, cash cow, right? So
yeah, right. Oh my gosh, yeah, and they're just progressing along. So I got to address one of the obvious things. I was doing a pineal gland meditation last week, and then right after I got done with the meditation, I accidentally hit my head on the corner of my desk, and I feel like it hit me right there in the pineal gland. So I'm like, oh my God.
If you're looking for a sign, well, there you go.
I know, right? Okay, maybe it had a. By the way, meditation is hugely important. I find, to keep grounded. Like, we are in some bizarro times, and I find that daily practice so invaluable for having me stop, chill out. There's something way beyond all the physical stuff that's going on that I want to stay in touch with, and it's so good. But and I'll let you be careful, but the pineal gland ones.
Well, I can definitely agree with that. We have to ground ourselves. You have to find something that you're really into. And, since you're here, I got these little kind of booklets here because we were thinking of getting our grapes ready now because we got a fair few grapevines up and down our fence line. So I'm not suggesting this. I'm just saying, for me, it's time to get in and putting our hands in the soils. And even though I might be cold a little bit, take the shoes off, be able to walk outside for a minute. The daytimes are still a little bit warm. It's not super freezing cold yet. But just trying to do something to get your mind off of the screen and get something out to give yourself a little more power, knowing that you're able to, come through this, being able to produce something on your own. I don't know. It's a little reassuring for me to go, yeah, well, if I build the soils again, I'll even have better production next year. And just getting outside. It's all about decompressing in nature and doing something, like you say, either meditation or really getting to something natural off a screen outside the news feed to keep your mind sane.
I did a series of interviews with extremely high performance people. So one guy was an executive of some insurance company, 2,000 employees that he was managing for his division. Several high-tech startup CEO type guys, with A series funding of 25 million, a big marketing company. And the one thing they all had in common was they grew some of their own food. And now they could buy anything they want, of course, right? These guys are lots of money. And they did it because one, they're such high performance people and such high achievers. They really wanted to be productive, but they knew they needed downtime. And they found that growing some of their own food was the perfect combination of downtime while still being productive. And they said that was the best 30 minutes to an hour of their day. Every day was when they were out with the gardens or the chickens or, harvesting or processing, whatever, something with their own food supply. Not to mention, they love the bragging rights because there's so much that you can grow or produce that you cannot buy.
Let me blast a couple headlines for you here. Okay, I got the first one. U.S. beef prices hit record highs. Nation's cattle herd expected to shrink through 2025. This is a Brazilian food processor, Marfrig Global Foods, and they talk about that. And then another one here. I couldn't believe I fell down on my chair. This comes off the Guardian of all things. Some ultra-processed foods are good for your health. Bread and cereals, which are heavily processed, reduce the risk of multimorbidity due to fiber content. And I remain speechless on that one.
Well, actually, the one reason I pinged you was that headline that's out now: $10 trillion a year is what the UN FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, is putting out a study they've just done. They've just done this analysis and just released it, and they estimate the cost of the food supply is $10 trillion a year. And that's because, there's no nutrients in it. People are getting sick and and everything that I've been screaming about for 2 decades. Right. So they're ramping up for something, when they're starting to pump it out there. And believe me, people go, the WEF, they're evil. I've hit the WEF up numerous times because like almost everything the Grow Network does is in alignment with every one of like the 17 SDGs. And I don't care if people are growing food. I don't care what you're aligned with. And you know what? They never, ever, ever responded, or there was never any connection, or backyard food production is the solution to almost everything. And I could never make any traction with that organization. So I'm like, okay, we see what your real colors are.
Right. If you were to try to include multi-camera angles and, passcodes to be able to access your garden based on a social credit score, they would have been all over you. But since you're like, grow it for free, let the world have free food, free the world, not a chance.
Yeah. By the way, I've had in my own personal life, so behind me, I've just moved and I was negotiating to buy a property, it's half acre, and I've been doing a lot of work on it. And we're here's price, here's terms, we'll use this lawyer, we're negotiating, right? And I thought for sure I had it. And then at the last minute they said, nope, we're not selling it. And by the way, we're going to be back next week and you need to be out. And just, legally I could have fought that and stayed, but I did, they're coming. I don't want to, I just like, I did everything I could to stop them. And they were like, nope, we're coming. And I'm like, okay. So in 1 week, I found another property that's suitable, and I'm a prepper, right? I've got backup food, I've got weapons, I've got beans, I've got bullets, I've got band-aids, I've got tools, I got trade items, I've got livestock. And I found a place, got it under contract, packed everything up and moved in 1 week. So I'm exhausted. I'm like, wow, if the world is going pretty crazy, I'm like right in it. I'm right in it. And so behind me, I've got all the box. I'm trying to get my office up and running. But
did you have some people helping you for that? Again, that's sort of a community effort. Can you imagine trying to box up your house? I don't care how big your truck is, just how much stuff can you put in boxes and box up and move before your back goes, can we take a break? We need another cup of coffee, like.
Oh yeah, believe me, we were buying coffee. So one of the things and I've heard you mention this quite a few times, is so there are some farmers that I directly support, like this young biodynamic farming couple. They bought some acreage last year and they're going to get it going, and they don't have a house. And I said, they were living in a container and they couldn't move that one. I said, here's $5,000, go buy another container and set yourself up a house, right? Or they needed some I said, here, I got a whole bunch of extra ducks, take these ducks, right? Because the slugs are eating their garden, right? And so when I called them up and I said, hey, I got to move, and they're like, we'll be there tomorrow morning at 5, you know. And the same thing I do a lot in the community here. We got a community garden going, and we host events. We host seed and plant swap parties every other month, and we host other things like composting workshops and things. So yeah, I was really, really touched at how many people said, "Hey, I got a spare bedroom." I'm like, you guys have no idea. A spare bedroom isn't going to even come close. But show up with a truck. Show up with a truck and some muscles. So yeah, I did. I had a lot of help. I was almost in tears in gratitude for the people that came out and supported me. But so, community is needing it. You never know when you're going to need it, right? You never know. So it was awesome.
Well, that's a great point here. Now, most people are using it, boxing something up, putting books in a box, duct taping it shut or some kind of tape. Tell me about the animals. How do you move a large amount of animals? I mean, even just having a bunch of ducks and chickens to move. I mean, how do you get all that prepared? If you either had goats or you're moving animals, so this, level up on trying to move live creatures from one point to another point. Like, fill me in on that whole movement process.
My main meat production are rabbits, and that's that I love them because they turn stuff that we don't eat, like grass and tree trimmings and bark and stuff, into fat and protein. And I have and actually maybe we can do a section on this sometime, and I'll get you some photos and things. I've got the rabbit tractors that I've built. They're 3 feet by 5 feet, and so like a buck will get one, and a breeding doe will get one. And I have a couple of empty ones that I fill up with babies once they get weaned. And I just drag it like every day. I move it like one segment every day, and they get fresh forage. I've also, at the last place I was at, I was planting all kinds of stuff that would be food for them. So comfrey, beans, gandules, moringa, all kinds of plants that would be additional food for them. And I really want to develop a diet for them where I don't have to feed them any pellets.
Norman Rockwell's Freedom from Want painting depicts one of the most peaceful scenes in American life as a family gathers around a holiday dinner table to give thanks, eat, talk, laugh, and share in an abundance of blessings. While this great American tradition will play out in the coming weeks, a hunger catastrophe is unfolding around the world, putting even the simplest of meals out of reach for a growing number of individuals and families around the world. Right now, nearly 1/3 of the world is food insecure, with over 828 million people going to bed hungry each night. 149 million children experience stunted growth and development due to a chronic lack of essential nutrients. As many as 50 million people in 45 countries are at immediate risk of famine, and more than 45 million children suffer from acute malnutrition or wasting, a devastating condition where a child's body is so starved of nutrients it begins to consume itself. These numbers are staggering, and behind every one of them is a real person. More than 44 million people in the U.S. face hunger, including 1 in 5 children. Millions of people in the U.S. don't have enough food to eat or don't have access to healthy food. This is a big problem, but together we can solve it. Although it isn't always obvious who is going without food or facing food insecurity, it might be your friend, your grandparents, or a coworker who is struggling to put food on the table. It could be a neighbor, the friendly elderly couple down the street. Maybe it's a single dad or mom who might need help. We all have tough times. That's why investing in emergency food storage is a must for you and your family's long-term safety net, but it can also be a life-saving gift. So in this giving season, you could help others by providing a helping hand to those in need of a little extra to make it through. As we always say, those who know what's coming are using today to prepare. American families are preparing. Folks are investing in emergency food storage, and you should be too, and you can start today with ADAPT 2030. Right now, you can save $200 on a 3-month emergency food supply for yourself, or even better, for someone in need. Make this holiday season truly a happy one. My Patriot Supply, the country's largest preparedness company, is more than equipped to stock your shelves. Their best-selling 3-month emergency food kit provides delicious breakfasts, lunches, and dinners that last up to 25 years in storage. That's 25 years of security. Just think about that. Almost nothing out there other than gold and guns that will maintain not only value but usefulness and security. And right now, it's $200 off. Get over 2,000 calories every day. Just add water and heat, then eat. Make sure every member of your family has a 3-month food kit from my Patriot supply.
So right now I'm giving them a combination of pellets and whatever grass that, whatever forage is on the ground now. But I ultimately, it's actually ultimately going to be fairly easy to create the whole diet for them. So yeah, that was a thing, put the rabbits in a little travel cage, move their homes, the little townhomes for the rabbits. And one of my best investments was a little 5x8 trailer that you get from like Harbor Freight or something like that. And, a whole bunch of tie downs. Hey, I got to tell you, it's starting to become Christmas time. The best thing for a prepper is to go in early December to Home Depot. Oh my God, they have so many sales. They have so many of these $9.97. You can get this and that and the other, and like those strap tie down things. I don't know how they build those. I don't know how they make those, manufacture them, and ship them to the United States for $10, right? And there's a set of 4 of them, right? Those tie down things are just so useful for everything. So anyway, I moved all the livestock, and as I said, I couldn't catch all the ducks, so we left some, and I said, "Hey, you guys got ducks now," and then I gave the rest to my farming friends. Had an old dog kennel. We shoved which is way better than the Puerto Rican way. They normally take a duck and they shove it in a plastic feed bag, and that's how they move them. I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And they're great. They got a big area, and they're in a place that's a little more moisture, so they have slugs and stuff. And I said, well, here's the deal. I'll give you all these ducks. I think I gave them 10 of them. They're going to reproduce, and as they reproduce, we'll get together and have a processing party, and I'll keep half and you keep half, and we'll just kind of have that reproduction thing going on, and I'll help out with the labor, and we're both going to have a really great source of organic duck meat. I'm actually looking at buying some cattle for them, miniature cattle, buying a small herd of miniature cattle, and we'll do the same thing. You guys take care of them, raise them, and as they breed, we'll divide the livestock, the proceeds in half. I think that's more than fair. So yeah, I'm trying to secure a food supply beyond what I do myself.
Yeah, speaking of that, here I was up at the Amish because we were getting I got a lamb the other day, and then we also had a pig processed up there, and they were smoking the bacon for us. So I picked up the new price chart here. Since you mentioned beef, now, so you're talking about miniature cows, so you're going about what, 300 to 500 pounds, something like that?
What would be the weight after processing? The animal weight, full carcass is going to be 800 to 1,000 pounds. Even miniature cows are big.
Yeah, those are live weight, and that's exactly what this is, live weight here. So 800 to 1,000 pounds is $2.65 per pound.
That's not bad, because what are you normally getting a meat to carcass ratio on that? Is 40% or so?
Oh, a little bit higher. And then if you have dogs, 50? You keep the bones, and then a lot of people like to keep the liver. And since it's raised elsewhere without all the antibiotics and all that stuff, you can actually consume the liver and the heart and that sort of thing. So the tripe, is a delicacy for a lot of people. So if you're looking at weight, which, Americans would probably throw everything away, from all the innards, they throw all the organs away, all the organ meat, and they probably take all the bones away. So yeah, you'd probably be at 50% or a little bit under, but if you're able to keep all the, like I say, the goodness with all the nutrients in it, you're looking at a good 60-65%. And then if you keep the bones for your dogs, far higher on the weight, probably 30% wastage. So you get about 70% of the animal weight on that.
Well, that's the way to do it. Actually, when I was raising my kids in Texas, we'd buy or half a beef and put it in the freezer. I was just talking to I've just picked up like 50 pounds of there's not a lot of real high quality meat here in Puerto Rico, surprisingly, like injections for antibiotics and everything. We found some clean meat sources. And I say, hey, I would love to get the sweet. I bought the livers, I bought the hearts, and I said, hey, I love the sweetbreads, which I think is the thymus. They said, oh, we can't give you those. It's some USDA processing thing. We can't sell those. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? What do you mean about that? Like, come on. It's crazy, but you're right. And that's where actually that's the reason I raise my own meat, my own rabbits, is because I want the organs. That's highest density nutrient food that you can produce in your backyard. And I wouldn't ever buy any organ meat from the commercial system. That's like toxic upon toxic. So yes, been a challenge.
Yeah, because when we got our lamb also, it was about 105 pounds or so. Jonathan, one of the Amish guys down there, was showing me the difference in the livers and how incredibly clean and just smoothly pure with that really dark, iron color into it, not a single blemish on it. And he's like, I want you to go to the supermarket and I want you to look at every liver that's out in the case there. They're going to be pale. They're going to have dots on them. And that's just all from everything that's required for it to make it through a USDA processing facility. But he's like, that's the difference in just what you'll see here with our lamb. And he's like, do it for everything. Do it for the pig, do it for the cow, whatever you look. Take a look at the livers, because the liver is the thing that will determine how clean that meat source is. And clean meats are harder and harder to come by. That's the whole thing. I mean, clean eggs also. You go through, and unless they're stamped, washed, and those chickens have everything under the sun given to them from the first day put into their bodies, then they're just not going to be able to pass facility tests. So, that's a World Economic Forum next check the box thing is everything's got to be processed or come through a factory. Well, stepping outside that, again, you can start to see that noose is ever so, slowly tightening around compared to even the food source pre-COVID and say 2019 to try to find sources now, because a lot of small companies have gone out of business. A lot of small mom and pop businesses have gone under. That includes raising food. So wherever you look, the constriction of food supply is ever present.
Well, the cool thing is you can still grow it your own. And I guess there's so few of us doing it that they haven't really cracked down on that yet. There's been a few things over the years where people are saying the USDA got a little wacko here and there, but for the most part, they haven't messed a lot with backyard food production. And I don't know. I see the scenario where we're headed into hyperinflation, and governments don't survive hyperinflation. So, I think backyard food production, it's always, for me, it's always been the thing that's the most important thing in a collapse scenario. What is the most important skill you can have? And being able to grow food is definitely it.
Yeah, because we talked to some people from Venezuela. My neighbor brought them over for dinner, and we had a chance to sit down and actually speak with somebody. Now, they were about, say, 16, 18 when they left Venezuela, and they're in their 40s now. So it was 20 years ago, approximately. And those were the kind of things that were talked about, is what disappeared first in the stores. Anything that you couldn't cook from scratch was the first thing that disappeared in the stores. And at that point, then farmers kept growing food. The police didn't really hassle them, although the police required bribes to get food from the farm into the markets inside. Now, they followed they sat on every road knowing which days markets would be, and the police were just incredibly corrupt. Asked for a percentage of either the food itself to be able to allow you to pass that roadblock to get into the city, whatever town or city it was. But generally, I'm just going to say generally, they were left alone because the police understood they were going to get a cut of whatever was grown out there. Let the others do the work for you, give them some protection, and a predominant amount were literally left alone to produce the food for everybody else. Now, I'm even thinking about, wow. And then we started to ask about what was traded, and everything was traded. Gold, silver, jewelry, tools. Money didn't really mean as much because it was going into a hyperinflationary event. So anything else turned to the screw to get one good traded for another, one good bought for another. And food was protein. Again, like you've mentioned, protein was something that was incredibly valuable, that had more value than, there was like you look at buying an ounce of silver or gold, there's a premium on it because so many people want it. It was the same thing with a protein source. And that was the thing, that people's farm animals were getting stolen all the time. That's when communities had to come together, and then the police offered more protection for more cut. So then, then I was juggling and going, wait a second, did the police, were they the ones stealing?
Maybe.
And then they're
Yeah,
the ones
right.
that forced you to pay them a higher percentage, and then suddenly the theft stopped, or they were allowing the bandits in to steal everything. And then, that roundabout way
Yeah.
to get more free food production after they stopped the problem they created themselves. So it was a really good couple bottle of wine conversation through dinner. But yeah, it
Yeah,
was.
we're headed into that. That's coming.
No, and it's still ongoing.
We're,
That's the whole thing. It never
yeah.
stopped. It's just the rules got rearranged and things still continue, and the countryside remains relatively unmolested, but the cities are just chaos still.
Oh
So
yeah,
let that be a
definitely.
lesson. Everything disappeared first. Was anything that was like processed foods, supermarkets. She's like, the only thing that was left is just what you could cook from scratch, mainly ground corn down there. Was a big one to make the staples. Everything was more of a ground corn based type of thing. But everything else evaporated like a genie. Just snapped the finger and it's gone.
Well, Dave, it's awesome talking to you. If people want to know how to grow food, we got that webinar at what is it, homegrown2030.com. And it's free webinar. It'll teach you the basics of how to get started growing food in your backyard. Even if you have no experience, you're older, you're out of shape. And it's the distillation of, 15 or 20 years looking at like what's the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for somebody to be able to start growing food, especially in a grid down situation. So anyway, it was a good conversation. We're going to have to do it again.
Yeah, let me ask you one last question now. I remember when the hurricane came ripping through Puerto Rico and all the electricity went down for a month plus, and the water turned off, and it was really kind of a month. You knew it would eventually turn back on, but nobody knew when. So like what kind of societal turn upside downs happened during that time? Was there more theft going on because people just couldn't buy things and people, kind of traded their morals to fill their bellies? Or walk me through that as just the last thought out, because I was talking about Venezuela.
Yeah, no, here actually people really pulled together. It was amazing. In fact, some people I've heard them say, gosh, I wish that would happen again, because the communities really came together. People helped each other, really worked as best as they could, took care of their neighbors. It's one of the reasons that I really like an island. The same thing actually happened in Cuba. Now there is some violence, and there was some, there were some young males mostly that taking advantage of the situation. But for the large, there were people really pulled together. And there's a couple of farmers here that were not farmers. They were actually extremely wealthy people that had other businesses, and they went through 2 months of that. They were living on a part of the island on the south. And when she said, oh my God, I'll never forget, Jennifer was saying, when the National Guard came, she just actually started crying to see them. But she and her husband, during the middle of that, they said, we're going to become farmers. They changed their life, and they quit doing what they were doing. For the most part, things went well. And I see that a lot in smaller communities. That's why I really recommend people get into a smaller community. Find a smaller community far out from a major city. I would recommend something between a population of 1,500 and 15,000. You're going to actually want to be inside or close to that community. People think, oh, I'll just drive. No, you won't. You think the price of, people drive too much now. You don't realize it. You want to be, within a mile of that city, because walking a mile is a good 15-minute thing, which is a lot of time. And there, and actually in the Middle Ages, they used to structure between each community. They'd set the communities up and they'd set the markets up 14 miles apart. That way, nobody was more than 7 miles away from a market. And that's because, and those people were in way better shape than we are. A 7-mile walk, you could do that early in the morning, get to town, transact your business, and go home again. But 7 miles was the longest distance anybody ever wanted to be out of town. I saw the same thing up in the hill country, where there were a lot of German settlers. The hill country of Texas. And they actually extended a little bit. They had some farms about 10 miles out of town, but then they would have what they called a Sunday house, which would be just a little tiny home in or near town. They would all, sleep on the floor. So they would come in on Sunday, do all their business, go to church, and then walk home on Monday. But they were never more than 10 miles out of town, because, when you're, it's going to happen. The price of fuel and everything is going to go up. So you got to think more of a lifestyle where you're not just turning the ignition and stepping on the accelerator.
Are you in shape enough to walk 7 miles? That's the question. A lot of people are not. The first few times you'll get home sore, but you do it 10, 12, 15 times, you're going to be like, all right, I'm ready for that.
You get your bed ready. Be closer. I mean, I've almost always lived a pedestrian lifestyle, and really being a mile out of center of town is actually a really good distance, and you can still find property that has a little more room on it. So, but definitely get out of the cities. That's just going to be a hellhole.
Anyway, it overlapped twice on stories on don't be in the city. Every time you tell the story, don't be in the city. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Hope you got something out of our conversation that can help you get prepared, because I know that something in the pit of the stomach is revolving around the planet. This just doesn't seem right. Even after COVID, it's even more. Something's even gone less right. So people are getting ready, and any bit of information that can help you do that, I'm glad that we have the time and the technology to bring you such ideas. So bye for now.
Yeah.
Today, the demand for gold continues to flourish globally. History proves that fiat paper money is designed to go to zero through inflation, whereas gold has intrinsic value in which it maintains forever. Paper money is a debt instrument. Gold is an asset of wealth in its own right. It does not depend upon any governments, corporations, or individuals' promise to repay. ITM Trading has spent the last 27 plus years developing a team of expert researchers and analysts to make this possible. Simply put, we build strategies which are historically proven to protect your wealth and assets through any economic downturn or currency collapse. Schedule your free gold and silver strategy call 866-834-1422. That's 866-834-1422, or go to learn.itmtrading.com/MIAC and keep watching Mountain High Time and Mini Ice Age Conversations if you know what's good for you.